for those tough wake-ups.
I want to give you a chance, Pete, to call a couple of plays.
Let's see what you can do here, buddy.
Yeah.
Okay, ball's on the right hash. We got the boys looking deep downfield. It's 2nd and 10.
It's Marsh and Melo.
But I got a feeling that we're going to go try to pick up a chunk right here. They're going to be defending low, and we're going to find a way. Quarterback scrambling. Gets the ball loose. High.
I feel like I could just recite what Peter. I mean, it takes some skill, but to try and recite what he did there. The quarterback is high. I just love that he just relied on high at the end coming out of that one. Welcome back to the show, everybody. Let's talk some CFL, Kyle. As my thanks to Sam Corbet, the brewmaster and co-founder from Sawdust City, for hanging out with me here on Marsh and Mello. But want to talk some CFL and get in some news and notes and some of your thoughts as well, because I've been writing about stuff this week on CFL.ca, and I talked on the breakdown about all sorts of my retirement theories, so people can check that out on the breakdown if they want. But it started off with a couple of names trickling in here and there, right? It was Braden Tram, offensive lineman from the University of Calgary, who was with the Saskatchewan Roughriders, retired. Taylor Loeffler via UBC with the Montreal Alouettes, used to play for the Bombers. Interesting player, retired. We get Courtney Stephen, which is a veteran guy. I didn't think he was going to have a huge contribution this year necessarily. Not a great spot for him in the defense, but he still would have contributed on special teams. He would have been great as a spot duty type guy. So he ends up retiring. Amongst all the chaos, we see Brad Sinopoli go down. I'm like, man, that's one of the bigger names that I had kind of theorized when I talked on the breakdown on Wednesday with DT. And then amongst all of this, we see Matt O'Donnell re-sign with the Edmonton Elks. And I was amazed by that, because O'Donnell is up there in age relative to the rest of these guys, and he's playing a position where the body gets worn down a lot. Not that other positions don't, but being an offensive guard is day in, day out. And I remember seeing him play at Queens before I was even in university, and he's signing back on as other people are leaving the sport. So there's been all sorts of craziness, but what has caught your eye in this week of announcements leading up to training camps?
Yeah, the Brad Sinopoli one was, I don't want to say sad, because he had such a great career.
I think it's fair, though. It's disappointing. You love watching a guy play, and you come to the realization that you're not going to get to see him anymore. That's fair.
Yeah, and it's like he left, and we never got to say goodbye, like on the field, right? You know what I mean? Yeah. Like we never got to, cover him one last time where he said, this season's my last. And again, I don't know, I have no insight into Brad Sinopoli's mind and why he retired now. But it's hard for me not to take into consideration the quarterback play in Ottawa over the last couple of years and whether or not that had anything to do with Brad Sinopoli leaving. Like Brad Sinopoli is like, oh, great. Now I got to come back and have some chemistry with another new quarterback that might get injured during the year because he's been injury prone over the last 5 years. And then I'm back to the old guy. Like that's what I'm thinking of when Brad Sinopoli retires. I'm like, man, if the structure was in place around him, maybe we got to see Sinopoli one more year in 2021. Not the case.
Yeah, for me, I think the saddest part was that his last year, he was
his numbers fell off, and it wasn't his fault.
No, like he was swimming like hell to try to get over to Rose on that patio door, whatever the hell the thing was that was bobbing in the water during the Titanic. He was swimming as hard as he could to try and keep his head above water in an offense that was very clearly going to drown. And that was disappointing to me looking back on it, as you say, because that 2019 year could not have been fun. And again, I feel like it's been long enough that Ottawa fans, you won't need a reminder as to the way this played out. But for those of you, I went back when I was looking to do the season preview of 2021 for CFL.ca for the Ottawa Red Blacks. And I looked at 2019. It's stunning, Kyle. Like I had forgotten, even as somebody who follows the game closely and loves it, that they ended up winning in Calgary to kick off the season. Dominic Davis throws awful interceptions in that game. They still end up getting the victory. Yeah. Then they come home. Cody Fajardo, week 2, Saskatchewan, his first CFL start with the Riders after Kolaros had been knocked out on the first 4 snaps or whatever of that game against Hamilton in week 1 in 2019. Fajardo gets the start. It's a thrower's duel back and forth. They're dropping dimes. I can't believe. I remember you and I that week leading up on radio, just laughing at how bad that game was going to be as a Thursday night. We're like, they got a short week. They got no time to prep Fajardo. Dominic Davis looked like trash in that first game. Somehow they got the victory. It was just like whoever wins this game, it's whoever sucks less. And they came out and they were amazing, both teams. Like I was so wrong about that game. And Ottawa won that one. They're 2-0 to start the season.
Yeah.
They finished the year 3-15. They had one win the rest of the year.
Didn't they lose like 11 games in a row or something?
Yeah, and the one game that they won was an overtime victory against Montreal. Like it wasn't even a super high quality victory against like a Hamilton or a Winnipeg or it was awful. After week 2, and I don't know if Sinopoli, he probably in his mind was like, we should not be 2-0. This is not a good enough, because he's seen good football teams, but he went that whole year in 2019 just doing what he could. But Dominic Davis is not somebody who's going to really efficiently get through reads and throw checkdowns and throw crossers and read it. And to me, that really sucked. That must have, for him, he'll never say it because Brad's a classy guy, but I'll say it for him. That must have sucked as his final year. Now looking at Nichols coming in, I totally get where you're coming from with having to get chemistry with another guy. I feel like with Lapalisse there, I feel like with what I know about Nichols and the way that he goes through progressions and knows how to get through his reads, he's not Trevor Harris, but he's more similar to Trevor Harris than Dominic Davis or Jonathan Jennings were. Yeah. And he would have had probably a pretty good year this year, but he would have had a pretty good year in a year where Ottawa's not going anywhere. Like Hamilton is good. Toronto should be much improved, and Montreal is still lingering and hoping to strike and take one of the top 2 spots in the East away from Hamilton or Toronto. So the idea of him coming back, going through all the aches and pains and all the practices and all the film, and just to be a team that gets like 5 wins, he's got a lot of good stuff in front of him. Brad's an incredible guy, quality person. He's going to be celebrated forever in Ottawa as a football legend, as he should. And for me, I think it was pretty organic the way that it went down. But there had to be some thoughts of, do I really want to do this? And I keep wondering, every person that I see retiring, from Derek Dennis to, as I mentioned, Taylor Loeffler and Braden Schramm and Courtney Stephen, and there has to be some combination of, well, I'm interested in things outside of the game. Maybe it's family. Maybe I can make the money that I'm making in the CFL going other places. Maybe I'm getting squeezed a little bit here on the salary stuff. Whatever the reasoning is, every time I see somebody that drops out this early ahead of training camp, I think to myself, they've known for a while. Like I don't think the guys that are calling it quits right now just woke up and decided. But what I'm super interested in is when we get a week into training camp, are they going to start dropping like flies? Because that will really be when people start to realize, oh, I might not have it, man. Like I might not be able to get back to the level of play that I thought that I could with a year off of the game. And maybe I wasn't training for a period because I knew I didn't have to. And it was the first break in my football career I've had where I wasn't either getting hit or having to train to get ready to get hit. So I'm intrigued by the names we're getting now. People are going, wow, that's shocking. It's not. Those guys have known. They have things going on outside the sport. It's the names that are going to drop in early training camp or in late training camp when they're getting released and they say, can I actually say that I retired? And the team's like, sure, you can have the narrative on this one. Those are the names that I think are really going to make people go, wow, I can't believe that guy isn't playing this season.
Yeah. So a couple of things. You brought up the fact Paul Lapalisse now with Matt Nichols. If Brad Sinopoli would have come back for another year, it probably would have been a quicker progression, getting that chemistry with their quarterback. Here's another thing that I think it's important to bring up. We don't know how Brad is physically. That's right. True. Sitting out for as long as CFL players have sat out at his age, be good on the body, right? Because you're knowing that you're going to go into a training camp and the hits are going to hurt more, right? Your body's going to hurt more, and you can feel that. And Brad Sinopoli is like, I've accomplished a hell of a lot in the game of football. He's definitely a Hall of Famer.
Yep.
So if you're Brad Sinopoli, what more do you have to accomplish? Like you said, 2019 sucked. Like it sucked for Brad Sinopoli. Like you look at his numbers, it sucked. You look at the situation in Ottawa, it all sucked. But at the end of the day, that's not a reflection of Brad Sinopoli as a football player, because we know the situation he was in. We knew when Trevor Harris left Ottawa and went to Edmonton, Brad Sinopoli, he was going to get hurt, statistically because of it. And it happened. The other thing, and I don't know if it was Naylor or Lalji, is somebody had tweeted out that they spoke to a CFL free agent this year and they asked the question, hey, what's going on with all these retirements? And this free agent told, I can't remember who it was, Naylor or Lalji, said, I think players are starting to realize, wow, I can make money, the same amount of money, or maybe even more money, not playing football that I didn't know before because I was forced to. The last year and a bit, I was forced to make money outside of football, and players are like, you know what? No, forget this. I think that's why Courtney Stephen left, right? Courtney Stephen's doing great work, like being a personal trainer and working in fitness, and that's his love outside of football. And he's like, I can make a career out of this. I can make money. I don't want to come back and play football again. Now, here's the difference between a guy like Courtney Stephen retiring and a guy like Brad Sinopoli retiring. I think the franchises both knew, right? Like all these guys that are retiring, I think the franchises had, knowledge that that player was deciding on whether or not they were going to play or going to retire. And them retiring is not a huge shock to those teams. Now, those two instances in terms of Courtney Stephen versus Brad Sinopoli, the Ticats, I don't know how much they were going to rely on Courtney Stephen, definitely on special teams. But as a starting Canadian, I don't think Courtney was going to be one of those guys. But again, if he would have went to training camp, only time will tell. Brad Sinopoli was definitely one of the starting Canadians for Ottawa. Now that he leaves so late in the process before training camp begins, you're going to have a hell of a time replacing that guy.
And I was actually saying this to our mutual friend Scott Hasty the other day when we were talking about this, and he goes, well, how screwed is Ottawa when it comes to trying to get the ball kind of shared around? I'm like, well, they were already in tough because they're trying to go deep ball stuff with RJ Harris. But to me, RJ Harris is not a top 10 deep ball guy in the CFL.
No.
So if he's going to be your deep threat and he's not a top 10 guy, what's that say about your deep ball efficiency? It's not going to be good. What they were going to do, this is the equation in my mind going into the season, was LaPolice was going to create something that was probably a little bit run-based like he did in Winnipeg with Andrew Harris. He was going to lean on Timothy Flanders. He was going to lean on whoever else they bring in there because running backs are a dime a dozen. You can find them. They can run the rock and whatever.
Yep.
But my thinking was, okay, if I'm building out this offense, Anthony Coombs has the potential to maybe do the Nick Dembski role, like in Winnipeg. Maybe that becomes Dan Peterman, or maybe Peterman plays the wide side role like you had Drew Wolodarski in Winnipeg. Then I'm looking around. I'm like, well, Jalen Saunders was supposed to be your vertical threat to the field side, kind of like Speedy B is for the Ticats with Tommy Condell, where he moves him over to that middle slot back. And the idea there, I think, was you're supposed to be able to go from, boundary wide receiver, RJ Harris, deep shot, get off of it, come back to the other side and look for Jalen Saunders. It's not the world's greatest 1-2 punch, but it's pretty good. Well, Jalen Saunders gets into a car crash, unfortunately. Hope that he's doing all good now, but he ends up getting put on the retired list. So the thought was, okay, now you got to go RJ Harris, and you're basically reading from 1 to 2 to a check down. And that number 2 in that progression was probably going to be Sinopoli on low crossing routes, rub routes, 10-yard route, because this dude's yards in air average in terms of targets over the last 3 seasons is never more than 8 yards. He's always down near the line of scrimmage.
But now he knows how to get open.
Of course, and he's great at it, but that's why in 2019 he had a whole bunch of catches, not as many as he did in 2018, of course, but he had a whole bunch of catches, and Ottawa didn't move the ball. Because when your offense runs through Sinopoli exclusively, and no knock on Brad because he's great at what he does, but when it exclusively goes through him and his playing style and what he's asked to do offensively, you're not going to move the football. You're not going to get first downs. You're not going to make your way down the field. You have to have things around. When they had Ellingson, right, going vertical down the field side, when they had Deontay Spencer, when they had Chris Williams, when they had Ernest Jackson, when they were surrounding those things, that's when Sinopoli was one of the best receivers in the whole damn league because he had those things around him. And it was just like, oh, shit, we forgot about Sinopoli. Damn it. And then all of a sudden he's breaking free and doing amazing things.
Yep.
When they can key on Sinopoli, it's the same thing we always talk about in the NBA. If you take somebody who is, the best player on, like, let's say a mediocre team, and you put them on a super team, they become the 3rd best player in that roster. They look incredible. But if you take them from being the 3rd best player on an NBA team and you slap them on another roster and they have to be the guy, that's tough because now they're keying on you and they can actually defend that. So I think for me, that was the biggest thing with Sinopoli in his time in Ottawa was he was on both ends of it. He was the sneaky guy who crept up on you, who was super productive, and he was also the guy they keyed in on. And it's no fault of his own. It's just what happened with that Ottawa roster is deplorable. Like where they went from, where they were, the Grey Cups they were in with the talent they had.
They lost everything.
To where they stand today. I pulled up here, Kyle. I was just going to give this a quick read for our listeners because I think this might be a fun little time capsule. I was just remembering as you were talking about the differences of him after everybody left. I wrote an article at the end of 2019 called What Happened to the Red Blacks? Okay. And this was on CFL.ca. And it reads as follows. They are who we thought they were, or at least who we expected them to be entering the season. Forget about the road win in Calgary week 1 against all the odds and the stats. Forget about the week 2 Thursday night football shootout win against Fajardo and the Riders. Those are just distant memories at this point, but so much of recent Red Blacks football feels as though it is at this point. The Ottawa Red Blacks dismantled the Hamilton Tiger Cats around this time last year. In fact, they did it 4 times throughout the season in 2018. Some were methodical beatings, but the final was a pure beatdown. This past Saturday in Hamilton, the Hamilton Tiger Cats beat Ottawa 33-12, defeating the Red Blacks at Tim Hortons Field for the first time since 2014 in what served as a fitting punctuation for the Red Blacks 2019 season. The Week 19 loss in Hamilton served as a great reminder of where the Red Blacks have come from, where they are now, and just how much those two things can differ in a single year. A year ago, Trevor Harris was shredding Hamilton up and down the field, to the point that defensive coordinator Jerry Glanville said leading up to the East Final, quote, "We've done just about everything we can to stop them. We have to get a turnover or maybe some luck." The old ball coach sounded pretty hopeless. Maybe he knew what was to come in the East Final. This time around, there was no Trevor Harris, nor his 1A replacement Dominique Davis, or the potential filled 1B and free agent acquisition Jonathan Jennings. Instead, William Arndt got his second career start Saturday as the Red Blacks turned the page and began, rightfully so, evaluating for the future. Side note, of course, William Arndt is now a BC Lion. Arndt would post the lowest accuracy grade of any quarterback in Week 19 while completing just 56% of his pass attempts for 112 yards. No true CFL fan needs the full history lesson on how the Red Blacks got to the point of a third-string quarterback being allowed to play out the games despite a lack of production in a 3-13 season so short that we don't know how we got here. Ellingson, Powell, Harris, Spencer, Elizondo. Football teams are about much more than 5 people, but when 4 dynamic players and a coordinator with a proven track record of success say goodbye, the Red Blacks' chances of maintaining their recent level of excellence left out that same door. Ellingson went to Edmonton with Harris, where the connection remained strong much of the season, while Powell left for Saskatchewan to become the bell cow volume runner the Riders have so craved in recent years. Both Powell and Ellingson have actually taken on less of a workload, targeted touch percentage, in their new colors, but have been more effective, production grade, than last season in Ottawa, while Harris spent his healthy section of the schedule in the lead or battling for it in most statistical passing categories. Offensive coordinator Jamie Elizondo left Ottawa for an XFL job in Tampa Bay at the worst possible time, putting head coach Rick Campbell in a bind few could overcome. What was left when the dust settled from Ottawa's mass exodus? Brad Sinopoli. Now, to be fair, there was Moses Madu and RJ Harris, Dominique Grimes, and Greg Morris, but in reality, the only true remnants of consistent playmaking from last season left was Sinopoli, whose workload has somehow gone down while remaining on a team desperate to find him touches. More important to Sinopoli's production grade in 2019, dropping off a cliff as his quarterback play has. This is especially true on second down, where he is producing at a grade of just 43 in 2019 after posting a respectable 54.4 grade in the same second down situation a year ago. Sinopoli is by no means to blame, and he has done everything to keep his head above water. Wow, I used the same analogy. That's amazing. A full 2 years apart. Sinopoli is by no means to blame, and he has done everything to keep his head above water in the confusing typhoon of losses, but I believe his 2019 season perfectly encapsulates the struggles Ottawa has faced in the 2019 season. Because the sport is such a team game and the Red Blacks lost so many important pieces, Sinopoli is a great micro example of the way football teams operate like an ecosystem and everything is connected. And again, I looked at the actual targets here that I posted in this story. It's stunning. Like between the hashes, where he was so good most of his career, 2019, he had, I want to say, there was only one target in between the hashes beyond 5 yards in the air for an entire season. Like
crazy.
When he was targeted, he had 100 targets. He caught 60 balls, so that's 60% completion rate, which is not great. 545 yards, which you do the math on that, 545 divided by 60, not a great yards per catch because he always is kind of underneath. But there were 4 touchdowns and 7 interceptions when targeting him in 2019. The previous year, he had 172 targets. He had more than twice. He had, Kyle, this is crazy. In 2018, Brad Sinopoli had 23 more completions than he did attempts to him in 2019. Again, those are fully healthy seasons. He had 100 balls thrown to him in 2019. In 2018, he had 123 catches on 172 targets. So he had almost 3 times the receiving yards the previous year. He had twice the touchdown. It was just, I do feel for the guy. To your point, I know that I'm going back on this stuff, but I wanted to bring that up because I find the differentiation between his 2018 and his 2019 to just be incredible. And I do hate that it's the way that it ended, but I do choose to remember that if you surround Sinopoli with the right stuff, that guy was amazing, right? And I think that's my main takeaway from his career.
Yeah. So again, you look at the Ottawa Red Blacks over the last, 3 years before the pandemic. What happened to the franchise? They won a Grey Cup. Henry Marsh retired.
Yeah.
Trevor Harris was now the guy, no longer the sometimes start, sometimes struggle. And, Henry Marsh would come in, save the day, win a Grey Cup, then he retires. And now you have Trevor Harris, Greg Ellingson, all those pieces are in place. Ernest Jackson leaves. And it's like, okay, Greg Ellingson leaves. And then Trevor Harris leaves. Sir Vincent Roger leaves. And it's like, and it's a massive part of the story on why the Red Blacks fell apart. That's why I thought after the 2019 season, I thought Marcel Desjardins was in hot water because I'm like, something is happening. And by the way, your head coach left as well. There's something happening in Ottawa on why nobody wants to stay in the current era of Red Blacks football. That fan base is awesome. Like, I've been down there for Ottawa games. They're awesome. They love the Red Blacks.
Yeah.
Grey Cup week when we were down there, there's still Red Blacks jerseys everywhere. Like, those people love their football, yet nobody wanted to stay. So what happened? That's why I felt Marcel Desjardins had some of the blame to take. Now, the pandemic has maybe kind of reset things a little bit. He's had a little bit more time to build a little bit of a better roster, but we won't know until they're on the field on whether or not he's built a better roster. And if Ottawa comes out and finishes in last place in the East Division, then Marcel Desjardins probably has to fall on the sword and say, I can't build this again. I built it once and I can't do it again.
I just don't. And again, I saw a quote, and Kyle, you'll love this. I saw a quote from Matt Nichols who said, I hope everybody chooses us to be last in the league and last in the East. And it's like, okay, but Matt, that's not going to look great based on what we see on paper on the roster right now.
Especially if your team's struggling 4 weeks into the season.
That's what I'm saying. It's like Corey Tyndall just retired as well, who's going to be a nice piece for them in the secondary. And it's like the linebacker play, if they get Deshaun Stevens as a young linebacker out of Maine, but I don't know if he's actually transferred because I know he was in the transfer portal in the NCAA, but they took some futures in the last couple of years. Michael Hoyt was I think an early second round draft pick for them who's still bouncing around the NFL. And it's like Marcel had previously taken Eli Anku, who just signed as a defensive tackle with the Bills after being with the Browns for a while and stuff. It's like they've taken futures. They haven't been able to maintain the guys that were there that they had success with in the late 2010s. And then I always go back to this too, which is the press conference audio of Marcel Desjardins, how he found out about Rick Campbell's resignation.
In terms of our conversation, I found out from Mark before I found out from Rick, and the conversation after the fact was generally that he did not think that our relationship was good enough for him to want to continue in this arrangement, which, is his opinion. The relationship has been the same since day one, but obviously the stress of this season must have played a factor in that.
Look, I'm as surprised as everybody else by this outcome. My expectation, as was Mark's, was that Rick would be back and we would work together to try to get this thing straightened out. So again, today is kind of a strange day, an unexpected day, but having said that, I'm thankful to Rick, not only for what he's been able to provide and lead off the field in terms of the culture we have with the Red Blacks, but also with respect to what he was able to do with his coaches and the players in terms of bringing us success on the field. So I wish him the best in his future endeavors. Rick's a good guy.
Rick's a good guy is one of my favorites at the end.
Yeah.
There. It's just like, I've kind of run out of stuff to say. Rick's a good guy.
Yeah, and you look deeper into the Ottawa Redblacks problems in 2019, it's like Rick Campbell's not an offensive coach, right? He needs a play caller because obviously he's a defensive guru. And at one point in the season, you had Winston October calling plays, and then you had freaking Joe Palpal calling plays. And I'm like, what is happening in Ottawa?
I wish we were
all the respect in the world for Winston October and Joe Palpal. Those guys know the CFL game, especially Joe Palpal. I was like, I haven't heard Joe Palpal's name in 5 years. Why is he calling plays for the Red Blacks?
I wish we were on a live platform right now with a real audience that isn't listening on podcasts, because I would love to post a poll question, frickin' Joe Palpal, question mark? And thumbs up, thumbs down, and just see what people would have to say on this one. But
it was after Winston October, and all of us in the preseason were like,
yeah.
Hey, I know you can't learn a lot from preseason football, but Winston October calling plays.
Winston October liked my story that I wrote on CFL.ca this week about Brad Sinopoli's retirement, and I clicked on his account. Guess where he is now?
I don't even know.
The same place everybody else who used to be in Ottawa is. He's in Edmonton.
Oh wow!
So I'm like, man, like,
was he a receivers coach?
I think so, yeah, and like maybe a pass game coordinator or something like that. So. I should check. I don't know. I feel like he's in Edmonton. I'm just not sure exactly what his.
Yeah, I remember Winston October as a player, and he was an unbelievable player. Like in some parts of this country, a legend. Same thing with Joe Palpal.
Yeah.
But it's like you don't want those guys coming in, and it's not that they were calling plays because those guys know football. I'm not questioning that.
Yep.
They're calling plays with no oversight because nobody is going to overrule them. Again, Rick Campbell's a head coach and he knows a ton about the offensive game. And I understand that. Rick Campbell will tell you himself, I guarantee it, he does not want to call plays. He wants somebody else that is more used to that role calling plays. And it wasn't like that in 2019. And that falls on the head on the general manager, Marcel Desjardins, that he didn't have the right infrastructure in place to make sure that team was going to be somewhat successful.
We did one big guarantee, Kyle. I just want to know before we wrap up the show today, do you agree with my one big guarantee for the Ottawa Redblacks in 2021? It was Paul LaPolice will be the Ottawa Redblacks head coach in 2022. Regardless of anything that happens this year, there's no chance in hell they bring in Paul LaPolice. They finally get somebody that it seems like has wanted to be a head coach for a while. I very much doubt that anything could happen this year outside of a scandal that would result in him not being the coach at this time next year.
Yeah. Again, the guarantee of Paul LaPolice. Look, is he going to help that franchise? Absolutely. But players play. And if he doesn't have the guys who can go out there and execute the system that Paul LaPolice wants to execute, it's not going to matter. Right? Like we knew this with Dominique Davis very early in that 2019 season. Yes, they started 2-0 and then it quickly crumbled. You pulled up the Brad Sinopoli numbers from that year. And it's like the process of surveying the field, the good quarterbacks can do it quickly. Dominique Davis wouldn't do it very quickly. It was, and you could tell he had happy feet in the pocket and he was an athletic quarterback that could move.
Yeah.
But he was like, okay, I'm under pressure. Where's Brad? That's why Brad's, yards per catch went down because he was catching the ball 4 yards past the line of scrimmage, 5 yards past the line of scrimmage, because Dominique Davis, he doesn't have that veteran presence in the fact that he can sit back there and survey a field and then hit Brad as the underneath guy or as the quick guy. He would do it very quickly. Do you remember, you might have a clip of it, of somebody emailing our show or texting our show or tweeting into the show saying about Dominique Davis and Matt Nichols and, he needs a veteran quarterback. And I'm like, no, he already went through that process in Winnipeg and he's still bad.
Yeah. All I have here is a couple of Matt Nichols clips for you.
We came out, scored more points than them.
Interesting. Okay.
They played well tonight. I mean, they did a bunch of different stuff to us.
Interesting.
Some wins are different than others.
Ah, wow. I think that's some of my my useless sound that was available there, I think.
Well, anyways, just to sum up the clip or what I said when we were in TSN was like he mentored him in Winnipeg, and I think my voice cracked, and that's why we cut it and used it on our show. But it's like how many times, and I always say this about football minds, coaches think they can always fix the problem.
Right, yeah.
Right? Philadelphia is going through this right now with Ben Simmons, right? I hear today Doc Rivers on the mic after they get eliminated again.
We're going to fix the shooting.
We're going to fix his shooting. I'm like, haven't you already tried this? Sometimes a guy can't shoot.
Yeah.
Sometimes a guy can't be a starting quarterback. He can be a backup and he's fine in that role. He cannot be a starting quarterback. And when are we going to realize Dominic Davis can't be a starting quarterback in this league? I don't know. Like, I think that story has been written now. I don't think any general manager or head coach wants Dominic Davis under center in an important game.
I believe he's still the backup in Ottawa. I might be wrong on that, but I think they re-signed him as the backup there. So if Nichols twists an ankle, then guess who's back under center again, you know?
Yeah, and that's what I said about the Brad Sinopoli retirement, right?
Yeah.
You know, he has to learn now chemistry with a new quarterback, and a quarterback that has been injury prone over the last little while. I guarantee you Dominic Davis is going to start a game for the Ottawa Red Blacks this year. And what does that mean for, that squad without Brad Sinopoli, and the fact of what Paul LaPolice going to, build a running game that hurts opposing defenses. But eventually in games, you have to throw the ball and you have to have a threat vertically. And if you don't, your offense is going to struggle. And I think Dominic Davis and that Red Blacks team, whether Matt Nichols is the quarterback, now that Brad Sinopoli is not there, is going to struggle offensively. We'll see if the genius of Paul LaPolice can fix that.
Dan Peterman better have 100 targets, is all I have to say.
I'm down. Dan Peterman.
I got great belief in Petey. I just I hope that everybody gives him the love. I'm going to finish the show off with an old classic for us here, but I just got to remind you again, fox40shop.com. Enter the promo code CFP15, get 15% off your return to play Whistle Needs. Make sure you're doing that. And of course, if you want to be able to get free shipping in Ontario on your Sawdust City beer, they got a great lineup, lots of fun stuff. Fun chatting with Sam Corbet today about lusciousness, hazelnut latte, imperial milk stout, 9.6%. I just finished it about 5 minutes ago. Holy boats! It was a task, but it was a fun one. It was just woof, man. And so if you want to be able to get free shipping, use the promo code CFL. Sawdust has been nice enough to hook up all of our listeners here on CFP and Marsh and Melo with a promo code to get yourselves free shipping. Save a little bit of money.
So last Saturday was my buddy's birthday. So we went over to his place for an outdoor patio, right? There was like probably 8 of us. And one of my buddies, Nick, is strangely jacked. Like Nick has always been jacked. He's Greek, right? So he has that like genetic muscle. Like he's ridiculous. Like his forearms are like my legs. Like he's just ridiculous, right? And he's jacked. And I got the beer shipment from Sam. I got the Juicin beer.
Nice.
And I gave that to Nick as a joke because we always say he's on steroids, but he's not. At least that we know.
That's great.
But he said the beer was delicious.
So good. Citrus IPA. I love juice, and it was really, really good. But let's round out the show today. No 3-minute warning, no Friday house party for you. I do, however, want to see whether or not this was funny because apparently in my records, when I search through my iTunes, I see 30 for 30 Arbuckle Nichols. We spent a lot of time talking Red Blacks today because of Brad Sinopoli's retirement. Let's see if the Arbuckle Nichols 30 for 30 was any good.
What if I told you that on a random Sunday in February, for the first time in a year, the CFL was back? That Nick Arbuckle became the first CFL quarterback not to take a snap for the team that acquired him since Matt Nichols, breaking an 8-hour-old record. That Darian Durant thinks both men should get signing bonuses and promptly retire.
That was my favorite one.
That given 11 months to find a solution, neither team could reach a deal, only to conveniently reunite former coaches with their quarterbacks of choice. That the under on snaps played was a safe bet.
Hey, Bill C218.
That both quarterbacks completed more COVID-19 PSAs than passes. That Nick Arbuckle could have paid Ottawa to keep him, and he'd still be an Argo. That Nichols missed his shot to work double blue.
Oh, wow.
That no signing bonus can justify the Toronto housing market. That Marcel Desjardins was playing 3D chess in what we all thought was a game of 2D checkers. That pinball will take credit if it works and have plausible deniability if it doesn't. TSN Films presents a story so crazy it made you forget about a team out west with no name, also having no head coach.
That's a great time capsule into February of 2021. It's not a team with no name, having no head coach. Oh, I'm so glad I saved that line for the end.
What an era of football, the Scott Milanovic era in Edmonton. He was the coach of a team without a name.
Oh, it's so good. Thank you for tuning in, everybody. We do appreciate it. At Kyle_Melo_ is where you can find my good friend Kyle Melo. I am at TSN_Marsh. We are at CF Perspective is where you can find us on Twitter and Instagram, cfperspective.com as well. Have yourselves a great weekend, and we will catch up with you coming up at the start of next week, the A Block, Monday morning right here for you on CFP.